and welcome to Concert Pipeline. I'm Steve Jones. My co-host Jens is out again this week. He's still on this continuous road trip to Mexico. He's in Mexico last I heard. I think he's around Cabo, something along those lines, relaxing on a motorcycle bike ride. So last I heard from him was like last week, and he's got a 2-week trip, I believe. So hopefully he'll be on the program next week to chat it up a little bit. But today I fly solo. So we have on the program today John Treanor from Tombstones In Their Eyes. I had the chance to talk to John about his new EP. It's coming out on April 26th, Higher Place. Definitely recommend checking that out when it comes out. We'll get to that in just a little bit. Before we do, let's catch up on kind of where I'm at, what I've got going on. There's a lot of irons in the fire right now, things moving and shaking, but I'm going on vacation starting this weekend and taking the kids on a road trip down south to Los Angeles and San Diego. I haven't taken a vacation in like a year and a half. I don't get out a lot, let's be honest. I figured, you know what? I'm going to get the kids away for spring break, get out and enjoy the outdoors a bit. And so we're going to stop in Los Angeles, hang out with a buddy of mine, John, and do some stuff. Nothing too crazy. Everybody's like, oh, you going to Disneyland? Are you going to go to Legoland? Oh, Legoland's super cool. You should go to Universal. You should go to Universal and do it. I'm like, I can't do the theme parks. I can't do them. I just bought a house. And so I'm, trying to do this as economically friendly as possible, let's say, while still having fun, eating a lot of crap food and doing cool things, right, that are outside of our normal neck of the woods. So that's kind of my plan. I've been trying to eat better over this past week and cutting out added sugar from my diet, which it's a drug. I tell you, sugar is a freaking drug, and I'm addicted to it. I eat a lot of crap, and I'm not proud of it. So I've been trying to cut it all out completely and exercise a ton, shave a couple pounds before I go on my trip, because I know I'm going to be eating not too great down south. And I'll tell you, yesterday was the 4th day of the no added sugar diet, and I just was so low energy from the detoxing of the added sugar that I'm like, okay, I needed to do it. I went to the store and I got some cookies, and I ate a couple cookies, and everything got all better after a couple cookies. It was amazing. So I'm just trying to find that happy medium with the eating. And then on the trip, I'm going to do some fun things, like take the kids hiking up to the Hollywood sign, and then I'm going to take them to Santa Monica Pier and by the Wonder Years house and also the Fresh Prince house. I know Will Smith is kind of blacklisted right now. He's I don't think he's canceled, but he's not a name you want to be spitting out of your mouth. But the kids enjoyed Fresh Prince, and it's in the area, so I'm like, let's check it out, right? So we're gonna stop by those places on the way, and then we have a rooftop pool at the hotel we're staying at, which is pretty cool. So do some swimming there, and head down to San Diego, visit some friends down there, and probably go to the zoo at one point, do a couple of other things around the area, hit the beach again, hit the pool, hang out, do a lot of just chilling and reading and relaxing, right? That's the plan. It should be pretty fun. I'm really looking forward to it. I mentioned I bought a house, so I get the keys at the end of the month. Looking forward to that, and then starting to make it my home and paint some of the rooms that need to be painted. I think I'm going to do that myself, and do a half move in, getting a lot of the stuff into the house, but not fully moving in until later in May. That's my plan there. And then the last thing is the Century Ride that I'm doing next month also. It's almost exactly a month away. My buddy Joe and I are working on building up to that. So this Friday, we're going to get a ride in and do 55, 60 miles, something around there, as we're building up. It's a pretty lengthy distance, I'll say. doing 100 miles. And the cool part is that each time we ride, we're building distance upon our previous ride. So this Friday's ride will be my longest ride ever. And then next weekend's ride will be my longest ride ever. And just keep that trend up as we keep going. And it's fun to be able to hit those milestones and accomplishments and feel the reward of getting out and doing something I've never done before, because I would have never thought I'd bike that far. That's like biking all the way across the bay. And that's quite a distance. So the final bike is going to be pretty interesting. It's the weekend after I move, and I'll probably be tired from the move, but I'll be excited to actually do something and hit that milestone of 100 miles. So that's it really. I mean, those are the exciting things going on in my life right now. I don't have a lot else really new to update on, so I think we should go ahead and bring in our guest. Again, I had a chance to talk to John. He's based in LA actually, and his co-bandmate James Cooper is based in New York. So again, the EP is A Higher Place. It comes out April 26th. Recommend checking out. But why don't we go ahead and bring in John? Well, how are you doing today, John?
I'm good. A little just been running around doing some work. Doing okay though. Yeah.
Excellent. I like it. So obviously we have a lot to talk about with the new EP and as well as the other music that you've done with Tombstones. I like to start at the beginning though. Tell me a little bit about what music you listened to growing up. What was playing in your household as a kid?
Oh boy. I mean, my dad was really into like Chuck Berry and Fats Domino and the Rolling Stones, and he took me to see my first concert at 10 years old, which was the Rolling Stones. I'm going to age myself here, but I don't really care. That was in 1975, which was a pretty cool first show. And, so from there, I went through this typical teenage stuff. And I actually got into Elton John, and because I was playing piano, and then I, on my own, like the Beach Boys and Kiss, Aerosmith, and then punk rock. That kind of changed everything, Yeah. And then through sort of punk rock, and then through the alternative scene of the 80s. And then, like bands like the Butthole Surfers, Pussy Galore, what else? What was I into in the 80s? I can't remember. Cramps were a big influence, early on. So kind of like all over the place, but mostly rock. You're not going to find me listening to much like world music or jazz or so I'm a little bit constrained or whatever you want to call it in my taste, rock and roll pretty much.
Yeah. Well, so I want to go back. So what do you remember of your first concert, the Rolling Stones? I mean, what an incredible band to be your first concert.
Yeah, especially in 1975, they had a lotus-shaped stage, and it was I think Ron Wood's first tour with them, and they had a giant inflatable penis that stuck out of the stage, which confused me as a 10-year-old. And I put pictures from Cream magazine on my wall of the show, and my mom tore them down immediately.
She wasn't about it.
No, she wasn't into the giant penis on the wall.
Yeah, you got more support in that area from your dad then?
Yeah. Yeah, he took me to see shows early on, like he would go to punk rock shows with me and stuff. I remember, we saw bands like X and the Go-Go's, and back when the Go-Go's were still opening for X, and took me to see the Blasters, the Starwood, and a famous LA club that a lot of cool bands played at, but eventually they they got busted for selling Quaaludes. So the owners, were involved in some drug dealing schemes. So it went under, but it was a notorious, well-known club. And took me to see Devo, 1980, which was great.
Wow.
So I was 15, and they were Devo and the Germs were two of the big bands for me that really changed the course of my listening, and then the Cramps following shortly thereafter, just, that whole scene where it wasn't cookie cutter yet, like it was just a lot of different types of music being lumped under the name of punk, but it wasn't, it wasn't hardcore yet, where everything became codified and uniform. Not that I don't love Black Flag, but they were early on too, so yeah.
And so as a young influential kid like that, you became friends with your bandmate James at about age 13. And did you start to go to shows with him and kind of develop that musical taste with friends as well?
Well, James and I took different paths. We met at 13 because our moms are both from Finland, and they met at the San Diego Finnish club or whatever. And so I became friends with James, and we started playing some songs. I remember, early on, we wrote a couple songs together, and he went on to play music, and I went on to be more of a, I got into drugs, basically, is what happened, and that kind of made everything take a backseat, to the drugs. So there were many years that I wanted to play. I'd get a guitar, and it would end up in the pawn shop or whatever, So it wasn't until about age 27 that I really started playing.
Yeah, and is that the time you were able to, I guess, put the drugs to the side, so to speak, and then really focus more on music? And
yeah, that's when I got cleaned up, and I had a choice at that time, like, should I go back and finish college, or should I become a musician? And that was a dream of mine, to write my own songs and do things. So I chose that, and it worked out pretty well, because I found a career, and I'm an IT consultant, which is a great job for a musician, and I support myself, set my own hours, all that kind of stuff. And it allows me to afford to play music, which is something you have to do these days, right? There's no money.
Yeah, I know it's hard to break through, right? And so who did you have supporting you through that transformation, I guess you'd say, period? Because I'm sure it was hard to break free from the demons and everything that were controlling.
I first met a guy when I in that period, 27, 28 years old, where we formed a little band and wrote a lot of songs, and never played out anywhere, but we wrote a lot of little demo songs. The band was called American Horror, and that was sort of the start. And then I got into a band called the Sawdust Caesars, who played around town a little bit and put out a single on In the Red Records. Our only claim to fame, really, besides playing with the Upper Crust at a club in Hollywood, which was shut down by the fire department. Then I was in another band in the early 2000s called The Boxing Lesson. And I had my own bands, Spiral Arms and Satellite, with a Y instead of an I. And so I was doing a lot. And all through this period, I never really got to where I wrote songs that I loved myself. I know I was doing what I wanted to do, but so here's how the Tombstone story starts. played in these bands, and I finally quit the last band I was in, where I was doing sort of atmospheric, delay type stuff. And I got married, and I just put down the music for about 3 or 4 years. And James and I hadn't seen each other since 1983. In 1983, James and I went on a tour with the Battalion of Saints, who were a San Diego punk rock band. We took a little mini tour up to San Francisco, and he just brought me along as a tag along kid, because we were both way younger than anybody else in that group. And then after that, I really didn't see him again until 10 years ago. I don't know what it is now, but I contacted his sister. Sometimes you don't know if you want to run into old friends or not, right?
Yeah.
So I asked his sister about him, and he said, well, he's sober and he likes baseball. And I was like, oh, I can talk to this guy, So we started talking, and we started writing songs together. We were just like, let's write a song, And so we were both using GarageBand, and we used Dropbox to transfer the projects back and forth. And that's where everything started, And yeah, so he became my musical guidance, a little bit, and he still is. He's like, he's part of the band, but he doesn't play with the band. He lives in New York, but I run everything by him. We don't always agree, but we have a policy that doesn't matter, right? Because it's okay. There was one song the other day where he said the chorus should be like this, and I went into the studio, thought about changing it, and I was like, no, I like it like this, and that was fine.
Stick with it.
Yeah. So that's go ahead.
Did it feel pretty natural to pick back up with James, both as a friend, on a friend level, but also at the music level as well, as you both grew in different ways, right?
Yeah, but it's weird. We both took this path where he got into the music scene more and did his share of drugs and all these things, and then we both came out the other side of the meat grinder, and we were fast friends immediately, and then the music thing, just he just is so easy to work with, and so I write the songs, but he is still kind of my musical conscience, my mentor, whatever you want to call it, like I trust his instincts, because he's he doesn't have an axe to grind. He's not in the band, right? So it's pretty wonderful.
Yeah. And I guess I want to know about the decision to kind of embrace that road also, because from my own perspective, I'm more introverted in that sense, and I have friends that I had back in high school, back when I was younger and everything, that of course with social media and everything now, they still exist, but
Right.
They're not a part of my life, right? And so I don't know, I'd feel weird myself going, and after 25 years, whatever it is, going up and being like, hey, I don't know, that's just me, of course, but so I guess I'm curious about what led you in that direction.
Yeah, like I said, it was that talk with his sister, and because I knew that we had a couple things in common, and that anybody who was in the same position as me, who had gone through the drug thing and got clean, was more likely to be at least nice, right? Because people that come out of that tend to be pretty nice, and have a common sort of viewpoint. And so I knew, and like I said, the baseball thing too, I was way into baseball and he was into baseball, so we'd have stuff to talk about, and it just sort of snapped into place, like no time had gone by, and we talk almost every day, and I go back to New York at least once a year to visit him, or just visit the city. Really, I love going to New York, just for a week by myself and do nothing, so go to comedy club or whatever. But anyways, haven't been able to go for a few years now because of COVID.
This whole thing in the way, right?
Yeah.
Things change a bit for sure. So
Yeah.
So yeah, you mentioned American Horror and your other bands that you had done, and you didn't make music that you were really proud of, but you were able to scratch that itch a little bit.
Yeah.
What would you say you took away or learned from those other bands, though, that you're able to apply to Tombstones in Their Eyes?
It's hard to say because, one of the things about me is that my skill level as a guitar player is not high. It's pretty minimal, and I don't practice much. I've taken lessons. I don't practice then. And so I don't really, I have it's sort of like having a limitation but a limitation that kind of works for you, because I finally found my voice, and what happened is, at a certain point during this process, we had a bunch of demos, and I decided to get a couple friends together to help me make a record. It was like, local guys and that I knew, a drummer and a bass player. And we made the first record called Sleep Forever, which I consider it pretty spotty, right? It's not like a lot of bands come out with their first record and it's a great record and then go downhill from there. It's sort of been the opposite process, in this band. The first record was not so great, but there was a few songs that kind of caught the vibe. But then we started doing these EPs and singles, and it really we started to find our sound. And a big part of that is our producer, Paul Rossler, who, so we recorded the first album at a different studio. When it came time to mix it, the girl who had recorded it was not super available. And so I took it into Paul's studio, and we became fast friends. And he really, since then, we've only worked with him. And, so between me, him, and James, we're sort of the brain trust of the band.
Yeah. And so let's talk about Sleep Forever, because I want to know kind of, that album is about kind of darkness and depression, in your life. How do you reach to that spot where you let yourself kind of be vulnerable and kind of approach those topics and kind of take it out musically, and you know what I mean?
Yeah, I didn't really realize that I suffered from either anxiety or depression until I was about 42. And then I started, got on some medication. I started going to therapy, and it kind of explained a lot as far as the drug thing went too, right? Self-medication for anxiety especially, and probably depression. But in the end, it became a vicious circle or whatever of one thing causing the other, right? By the end of my drug use, life was so scary that I had created a monster basically. And so anyways, 15 years down the road after I cleaned up, I discovered I had this, depression and anxiety. And in Sleep Forever, our first demos, a lot of them were pretty dark, and but it was not in a way that's like, oh, woe is me type thing, or it was more just a catharsis, right? I like dark music. I like sad music, so that's where that comes from. And after Sleep Forever, and especially during the next 3 or 4 years, I had a lot of issues with the depression and anxiety, and it all came out in the music, but like I said, not in a wallowing in it way, just in a let it out way.
And it helps. It's like therapeutic for you then, right? Like, it's
completely.
Like
Completely. Yeah. I mean, the best songs I've written, I think, are written when I was super depressed. maybe not always and maybe not anymore, but there was a certain period where I was down in the studio almost every night just because I had to be there, and working on letting this stuff out. I mean, we've written hundreds of demos, and they don't all make it out there, but it helps.
Yeah, yeah, and so speaking of the demos, I mean, that took us to kind of the next album. Kind of toward the beginning of the pandemic, you put out Demos Volume One, which I think was a channel for you to be able to release a lot of that music that hadn't been out there for fans. But also, what I'm curious about is when you went back and revisited those songs, like, how did you approach that? I know you re-recorded some vocals and stuff on some of it. Like, what was your approach to putting that together?
The demos, we didn't re-record anything. What you're thinking of is Collection.
Okay.
Yeah, that's okay. Yeah, it's like the demos. I just found the right version, because some of the demos captured something that we couldn't recreate, right? And that was the purpose of putting that out. I could put out 5 more of those, and eventually I'll keep doing them. But right now there's so many like songs in the works that that's not going to happen for a little while. But what I will say, going back to the re-recording stuff, is when we put out Collection, that was a collection of the early EPs and about half of Sleep Forever. And I was able to fix some things on Sleep Forever that I didn't like, spruce them up a little bit with the knowledge that we had gained, Paul and I had gained working together, and so that's where that comes in.
Yeah, and so it sounds like you have a lot of material that doesn't see the light of day, so to speak, right? And how for you do you how do you let something go versus, this is right for this album? How do you tie it in like that?
Yeah, it's a process. I mean, basically it starts with the demos, and if I write a demo that I want to listen to 100 times, that's going to go on a record, and other ones are just like meh, and we save them, sometimes there's been ones where, like, I'll write something that's pretty good, but then the next day I'll write something that's really good, and the pretty good one gets sort of forgotten about and lost in the shuffle. So if I ever get writer's block, all we have to do is go into Dropbox and find those ones that we missed, so. Yeah.
And so kind of charting the progress, really. Looking for a Light was your next album. And I really like, I like the feeling of the between the 2 albums, right? I mean, Sleep Forever and Looking for a Light, it kind of paints a picture of your progress and your processing through a lot of the things you're going through, right?
Yeah. Well, there was an album in between actually called Maybe Someday. Do you have that?
I don't think I listened to that one. So,
okay.
But tell me about it.
I should get it to you then somehow. It's it's like the midpoint. Before that, we were doing a lot of singles and EPs and stuff, and then we decided, okay, let's do a real record again, and we ended up with 12 songs, and I think it's a great record. The CD version has all 12 songs. I think the vinyl version has 8 songs, and I think the vinyl version is superior because I didn't include any of the maybes, right? So on this, it's a little, more concise and but whatever. There's 3 or 4 other songs out there that wouldn't have seen the light of day otherwise, and they're on the CD only. So so that was the next sort of stop in the train, and then came Collection, which is where we compiled everything and remastered everything, and then came Looking for a Light. And Looking for a Light, getting back to that, is Yeah, it's I think it's an amazing record myself. I you know, like, I hate, to sound egotistical, but the songs are so evolved from where we came from, like even from the Maybe Someday record, which you'll hear soon. It's no longer like we had sort of departed the realm of like shoegaze and psych rock and whatever pigeonholes you want to put us in, and it was just songs. It's just good songs, and they were all different.
Yeah, yeah. And so I want to know kind of your approach with, because you work with Paul on every album, right? He's just been
Yeah,
there through the whole thing. He's like a member of the band, pretty
yeah,
much.
yeah.
But so when you go in and you're approaching a new album, a new series of songs, what does your partnership with Paul look like? What does he bring out of the process?
Well, he's helped a lot. He's just a good, like, similar to James, he's just a good sounding board, and he has opinions of his own as the producer, and as the mixer, and he does all that stuff, and and he knows what we should sound like, basically, and because we've gotten to where we have a sound kind of, even though, like I said, the songs are different, and even the new EP that's coming out, the songs are all a little different, there's just always that through line, of Tombstones In Their Eyes.
Yeah. And so do you go in and you say, okay, this is how I want this album to feel like. This is the feel I wanted to kind of walk away with, or you let it mold naturally?
It's all natural. Like, we take the songs we have. There's no, concept. And this goes back to my limitations, right? I could never copy anybody because I'm not good enough, which in a way is really good, because everything I write comes from my limitations. And sometimes I, do some cool stuff. And yeah, it's what was I going to say about that? So it's whatever comes out that day. Usually my songs are written in like 3 hours. I'll go down to the basement. I'll put down a little drum track, write a rhythm guitar track, and then I'll sing Stream of Consciousness over it. And 90% of the time, the Stream of Consciousness lyrics stay, except with sometimes minor tweaks. But it's interesting. It's a weird way to do it, maybe, but it works for me. And I think it's kind of cool, because it's like my subconscious is throwing this stuff out there.
Yeah. And so on Looking for a Light, you have, I mean, obviously a lot of that was done during COVID. You were able to do that in studio though, right? Like, you didn't do the whole sending files back and forth. Well, I guess you used Dropbox too, right? But
it was hard, and here's, it was difficult, like, mainly to get like the drummer in the studio. Steven Striegel is our drummer for a long time now. Great guy, great drummer. But he has a family, and we didn't want to expose him. Paul and I were maybe a little more lax about going in sometimes, together, because we both got our shots when we should, and did all these things, and and I didn't have that fear with him, and but it took a long time because of that, mainly getting the drums and bass on there. So and I'll backtrack a little bit. One of the ways I bought some pretty good equipment for my house, so that most of the guitar tracks are done before we get to the studio.
oh,
So
okay, wow.
yeah, so I bring them, I send them all the files, and do most of the guitar stuff at home. It works just much better that way. And then the drummer will play along to the the demo guitar basically, and the bass player as well, and then we do it like that. That's our process.
Yeah. So let's talk about Higher Place a bit, right? Tell me about how, I mean, we're in a different point in COVID now at this point, right? So things are a lot more loose, a lot more open. What was the process for you on this side of COVID in terms of making a Higher Place?
Well, during 21 and 22, I wrote a lot of songs, and it got to the point where we had about 29 or 30 songs in the works over at Kitten Robot Studio, and it was actually freaking me out because it was an unmanageable amount of songs, right? You know, like I started making an Excel sheet for the first time, and you know, like trying to grade the songs, and you know, like it's crazy. And so really, like a Higher Place includes a few of the songs that I intended to be on the next real record, but there's so many songs that the next record is going to be fantastic anyways. You know what I mean? It's like so it's okay. You know, they're gonna hit vinyl eventually. They're gonna be out there. I mean, the opening song, I Know Why, is just one of my favorite songs I've ever written, you know, and, you know, I was saving that for the record, but then I was like, you know what, we can't just do that. So in a way, and I've compared the Higher Place EP to a release valve, right? It's a way to get some songs off the table so that I can focus on the rest of them and get the record done. So yeah.
You don't sit still easily when it comes to writing. You got to keep writing, got to keep channeling that, right?
Yeah, there was a period, really, actually, during the last month or two where I haven't been writing because we've been finishing up the EP, and in a way it was a conscious effort not to write, you know, which I'm usually writing 2 or 3 songs a week, or sometimes more, but I didn't do that for a while because we had too many already, and even though someone told me, I think it was James, said never stop writing, you know, but there was just too much else going on. So yeah, so because we were putting the art together, and that was a hassle, and all that stuff was, you know, yeah, and figuring out which label we were going to put it out on, because we were on 2 labels for Somewhere, for Looking for a Light. We were on Somewhere Cold, which is a guy named Jason Lamoureux out of Lexington, Kentucky, a nice guy. And we were on Kitten Robot Records, which basically Paul's studio is called Kitten Robot Studio. Mm-hmm. And the owner is Josie Cotton. And she decided to start a label. So we were one of the first bands on that label, and it's our home studio. It feels great to be on our sort of the home label, you know. So this record is not coming out on 2 labels. It's just going to be on Kitten Robot Records. It was difficult. Yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say it comes out in April as well, we should say. So
yeah, April 26th. And let's see, how are we doing on time?
I'm at your disposal, so whatever works.
Yeah, so I'll just mention the live band a little bit real quick, if that's okay, because
that's where I was going next. I was gonna see if James is in the band. You know, I know he's on the other side of the country. How does that work?
Yeah, no, he's not in the band. So what we have now is I had one of the guys that helped me start the band, Josh Drew, originally on bass, moved to guitar. We had another bass player who moved out of town right around the first summer of COVID. So it took a lot of finagling to get a live band together. And recently we've gotten more into harmony and stuff. So I thought it'd be cool to have a female voice on the records. So I got a friend of ours named Courtney Davies to participate on that level. We have a great new guitar player named Phil Cobb. We have another great new guitar player named Paul Booten. And we have a fantastic bass player named Nick Nafusi. If you want any of those spellings, just email me or something, and I'll give them to you. Or they're in the press kit, probably. Maybe not. I think they skipped that stuff in the press kit, which kind of I didn't like, because band members like to be in the press.
You want to give credit where it's due, right? So
exactly, yeah. So, but anyway, so now we're kind of gotten to where I always wanted to be, where we have like 6 people on stage. Yeah. The only thing lacking is maybe keyboards, and because one of my big all-time favorite bands is the Brian Jones Sound Massacre, right? And they have a full stage.
Yeah.
And I like that, and that's our music is very layered, and in order to recreate it, we need more people, So yeah.
So you've done 2 shows, and I think they were pre-COVID, right? One at a bowling alley and one at an art commune.
No, yeah, one we did. Our first show was at an art commune. That was years ago, and then we've done a couple of shows at a place called the Redwood Bar and Grill, whatever. It's in downtown LA. The guy who runs it is named Eddie, and he's got his moniker for his business is called In Fuzz We Trust. So that's he's put us on a couple times, and then we played the bowling alley gig recently, which was poorly attended because it was way out in the valley, and we haven't played that much live, so you can't expect to pack a room until people start to know who you are. So we've actually got like more of a higher profile out in the internet, world than we do at home. We hope to change that.
Yeah. Are you planning any shows as we get into summer or anything?
Yeah, we have a show coming up. It's going to be a little more high profile. It's at another bowling alley called the Highland Park Bowling Alley, and but this is a hip, in a hip part of town, with good bands. It'll probably be well attended, and I consider the other bowling alley show more of a practice show, and we sounded pretty good, so I'm happy with our progress.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, John, I want to thank you for taking the time, and I know you're excited for the EP to come out as well.
Yeah.
So it's always fun to get the music out there, right?
I love it. I love being in the process. That's another reason for the escape valve comment. It's just like we haven't had anything out since 4/20/21, so it's been a year, and trying to remember if I forgot anybody. I think I mentioned everybody's name, and thanks for allowing me to do this. I appreciate it. Appreciate your time, Steve.
Yeah, I appreciate your time as well, and hopefully you'll be able to get up to the Bay Area and be able to see you in the van live. That'd be pretty awesome. So.
Yeah, where are you? Where part of town are you in? Up there.
I'm in Napa right now. Here, I'll do the camera flip for you, actually.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. So
yeah, we'll definitely get up there. I mean, we have to start playing out of town, and obviously San Francisco and San Diego are 2, sort of no-brainers, right? So I think we do well in San Francisco.
Yeah, hit the West Coast and get some shows going. I like it. So
yeah.
Very cool. Well, John, I hope you have an awesome rest of your day then.
Thank you so much, Steve. I really appreciate it. I really do.
No problem.
Okay.
Hope to see you soon. Okay.
All right. Talk to you.
Thank
you, yeah. Bye-bye.
Bye. That was the interview with John Treanor here on Concert Pipeline, and that takes us to the final segment on the program, the music news. All right. Got a couple of stories as we wind out the program. What's going on in the music world? This was an interesting one to me. A man got a VIP ticket to Ultra Music Festival for snorkeling his way into the festival. So he snuck into Miami's Ultra Music Festival. Only in Florida, by the way, does this happen. And he was swimming and snorkeling, and he was allegedly rewarded with a VIP ticket for his efforts. Jack Davidson, he documented the journey on his TikTok, and he claimed that security guards were so impressed with his idea that they gave him a free pass and an upgraded ticket. He managed to get close to the event, which took place about a week and a half ago, before getting, I guess it was last weekend actually, before getting spotted by Coast Guards. He was snorkeling in water surrounding the Bayfront Park on the southeastern Florida coastline when patrolling guards spotted him. They caught me and put me in the police boat, and he had a video that showed it. And then he showed clips of him with members of security who he claims let him into the festival with the VIP pass. Tickets, there were 165,000 people at this event, and tickets cost $350. Let alone, I wonder how much a VIP pass would cost. So, this guy posted videos of him pouring drinks into his snorkel and sporting his wetsuit, snorkel, and flippers as he got stuck into the festival partying. So then, okay, so here's what I wonder. He's getting into this festival, right? He's snorkeling. He's in. Oh, cool. He's got a VIP pass. He's hanging out in the cool people area where you get drinks. By the way, I've been in the VIP areas of festivals, and let's just use Bottle Rock as an example. The VIP area, not too special. You get maybe a little shorter lines for drinks or what have you, but it's not nothing too fancy usually. It's not like a backstage pass where you're schmoozing with the artist or anything like that. But you're in the spot. You're in the festival. You still have all your snorkeling gear on, your wetsuit, your fins, all of that, right? All that's still on you while you're at the festival, listening to the music. And then, okay, festival ends. Do you snorkel home? Do you snorkel back to the other side? You have to get out the same way you went in. Yeah, so I don't know. It's an interesting one, right? No, and Davidson said that once he was in, nobody questioned the outfit at all. So, I mean, it's Florida, so I guess crazier things have happened, like, monster gators just walking down the road or something. So, interesting story. All right. On to Paul McCartney. His childhood home has been open for undiscovered acts to write and perform. So he's opening his childhood home for these unsigned artists to get some inspiration from. I guess the inspiration breeds within the walls, right? Hey, Paul McCartney grew up here, magic was made here. I can make some great music, right? This kind of endeavor will see artists chosen by Mike, I guess Paul's brother, and local partners to write music at the same place where Paul and John Lennon forged their distinguished songwriting partnership. And this is where the two wrote I Saw Her Standing There, and When I'm 64. The property is now owned by the National Trust. So the scheme, which opens later this spring and closes at the end of the season, also comes amid a celebratory year of Beatles anniversaries, including McCartney's 80th birthday in June, and the 60th anniversary of the Beatles' debut single, Love Me Do, which comes in October. So there's a lot of hope for aspiring artists to be able to go there and make some music magic. Great. Let's talk about rich people, shall we? Specifically rich musicians. Rihanna, Jay-Z, and Kanye West have made debuts on Forbes' billionaire list. According to the annual list, Rihanna is now the world's richest female musician with a net worth of, yes, listen to this, I hope you're sitting down, $1.7 billion. I had no idea. I mean, if you would have asked me how much Rihanna's worth, I probably wouldn't have gone over 150 million. But she's in the bees. She's a billionaire, and very comfortably so, apparently. So according to the annual list, let's see here, she sits at number 1,729 on the worldwide list of richest billionaires. Jay-Z is following her at 2,076 with 1.4 billion, and Kanye it sits at 1,513, which I mean, he's not hurting too bad, right? At the very top of the list is Elon Musk, who is worth an estimated $219 billion. Yeah, so I heard this week that he bought into Twitter, significantly so, to the point where he could have provided, well-being for everybody in the country, and not had to blink an eye. $219 billion, right? Imagine that. There's 350 million people in the US. So if you have 219 billion, hey Siri, what is 219 billion divided by 350 million? If he could give each person $625 if he split up his net worth. Every person in the US would get $619, more so if you take out children, what have you, right? Second is Jeff Bezos, worth 50 billion, so he's very low, much lower on the list. Interesting. So let me see here. What's next? Okay, next up is Everclear. Let's talk about Everclear. They've announced their 30th anniversary tour. They're celebrating 30 years this year, and to mark the milestone, the band led by Art Alexakis has announced a 25-date North American 30th anniversary tour featuring Fastball and the Nixons. Setlist is going to run the gamut of Everclear's career, including songs from their currently out-of-print full-length debut, 1993's World of Noise, which the band has announced will be remastered and made available for the first time on all digital streaming platforms on Friday, June 10th, which is coincidentally the day after they start their 30th anniversary tour. They do have a number of dates ahead of them, including a date in Redondo Beach at the Beach Life Music Festival in May. That's closest they're getting to the Bay Area here. They have a number of dates on the tour. San Pedro, California, down near Los Angeles, is the only California date, it looks like, on the 30th anniversary tour. So interesting story. I saw Everclear with Fastball in 2000. So that was 22 years ago. I saw them tour together, and opening the show was Nelly Furtado. I mean, that was a packed lineup. It was a radio station show at the Warfield, and Nelly Furtado was the opener. She was just a blip at that point. She hadn't even sprouted, and none of her hits had come out yet, I don't think. She was just getting started, and I remember her being quite beautiful. But she has amazing eyes. Okay, I won't go down that road, but that was a fun show. And Everclear does this thing where they pull fans onto the stage, and I was pulled, Art pulled me up onto the stage at that show for one of the songs of their set. I think it was Father of Mine, if I remember right. I mean, this is 22 years ago, so who knows, right? But that was pretty awesome to get to be on stage at that concert. So congratulations to Everclear on hitting 30 years and spawning a tour from that. So all right, so we usually end the show with a Dave Grohl story, as we talked about last week, and it should be no surprise to anybody really. Foo Fighters drummer Taylor Hawkins passed recently. Excuse me. And so Dave Grohl's kind of laying low right now and taking time to process. There's no real Dave Grohl news that I've been able to find right now, which is fine. But we can talk kind of a little bit about Taylor Hawkins and tie in Kurt Cobain. Let's talk about Kurt Cobain first, since that's kind of that's Dave Grohl's older days, right? Kurt Cobain's final days are being turned into an opera, actually. The production, called Last Days, will be a production adopted from Gus Van Sant's 2005 film of the same name. The film, which was centered on a young musician called Blake, was loosely based on Cobain's last days. As everyone's, I'm sure, familiar, Cobain died by suicide in 1994 at age 27. A description from the Royal Opera House says that the opera plunges into the torment that created a modern myth, and that Blake is haunted by objects, visitors, and memories distracting him from his true purpose, which is self-destruction. The creator of this was a massive Nirvana fan, and the music soundtrack to his teen years, and some of the first music he learned to play on the guitar. This I guess is in the works right now, and more to come. So the Grammys were last weekend, and they paid tribute to Taylor Hawkins as the Foo Fighters swept awards. The Foo Fighters won every Grammy they were nominated for at the ceremony on April 3rd. They won Best Rock Performance for Making a Fire, Best Rock Song for Waiting on a War, and Best Rock Album for Medicine at Midnight. And that makes them the most awarded American band in Grammy history. And there was a brief montage to celebrate Taylor Hawkins, who died on March 25th. The video blended interviews and backstage home movies with live footage, ending in an audience sing-along of the group's My Hero. And the Foos, of course, pulled out of the previously scheduled Grammy performance, which they were planning on doing. They've pulled out of all of their performances and canceled their tour, which means that they're not going to be playing the Aftershock Festival in Sacramento. It's up in the air what comes of the Foo Fighters, obviously. We may not have an answer to that in the coming days, weeks, or even this year. We'll just have to see what happens. It's kind of a somber note to go on. I'm sorry, but big Foo Fighters fan, and I hope that everybody in the band is, able to process through, all of the challenges that they've been facing this past week since the news was released. That is our show for today. So again, I want to thank John from Tombstones In Their Eyes, and next week on the program, I will be on vacation, but I still plan to bring a show to Concert Pipeline. So that'll probably happen at some point next week. Not sure exactly when, but we'll have an interview with a band called Beautiful Machines. So that's our show. Everybody, thank you for tuning in. For all of us here at Concert Pipeline, I'm Steve Jones. We'll catch you next time.